Start our prayer. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harih Om, friends. We are at our text, the Manual of Self-Unfoldment, chapter 6, and the first topic, which is contemplation, self-inquiry. We have covered few paras, and now Gauri, unmute. My question is, what is the need for self-inquiry?
What is the need for self-inquiry is the question. We have seen that scientists have been improving our standard of life, standard of living. But in spite of a very high standard of living, if the subject, humans, are not content in their life, or they are not happy, they don't get the joy in what they are doing, or what is going on, then slowly to know how we will be able to get that contentment throughout our life. What right now we are getting, the happiness and sorrows, is for moment we are happy, then again lot of sorrows, again few moments of happiness, again sorrows. So if we want to be in that continuous stage of joy and happiness, then how we will be able to achieve that will be dependent, as Guruji says, not as you quoted last time, that I don't remember the name of the scientist, but he said that the attitude of the observer, what he is looking through, when he is looking through the microscope or telescope, will be very important. To know what he sees. Depending. So the self-inquiry is very important, because the subject should know himself. Then depending on that, as we always say, that if it is not possible for us to change everything else outside, but it is only possible for us to change ourselves, our attitude, our views, and then only we can be, even if all the things remain the same way, we can still be happy and content in the same situation. So the self-inquiry is very important.
Very good. Your attempt is very good. You have given two reasons possible, but in the first reason, what is the criterion for getting maximum happiness? Meaning, we are getting now and then the pleasures, etc., in the outer world, the happiness and all that. If the happiness has to be increased in its grade, quality, quantity, then there is some criterion set. We have observed something that there is a greater and greater happiness possible. What is the criterion? Question goes to Mohini. Mohini, unmute.
If the mind is calm, then we experience happiness.
So
more and
can you
more,
keep,
more and more calm, mind is more calm, then more happiness.
so is it possible for us to keep the mind absolutely calm and do the business? When we enter into any business or transaction in the outer world, it is bound to be that mind is busy and then it cannot afford to be calm.
Yes.
Next, Rucha.
I think mind can be calm as we go from grosser body to subtle body.
Very good. That is the answer.
Higher.
Subtler the level, there is a greater happiness.
Yes.
We have discussed this in the close of the last topic, last chapter, that a sense, mental satisfaction is greater than the sense pleasures or sense gratifications. Intellectual perfection is greater than the mental satisfaction. So if we go like this, the subtler the personality, there is a greater share of happiness. So the last topic ended with a question mark, that is it possible for us to identify ourselves with the subtlest in us and remain all the time at that level and experience happiness in spite of the outer situation? See, that was the question. This is the first reason that was suggested in the last topic, last session, that how to identify ourselves with the subtlest in us. For that, we require to conduct a self-inquiry. This is one reason for that. Now, this is subjective, personal. We don't see the personal all the time. We also we look around and we find that the research on science and research is going on in the world outside. They have discovered something, but now they have come to one variable over which they have no control. And as Gabriel has rightly referred, Einsteinian has said that when the observer is looking through the telescope, the interests of the observer cannot be overlooked. Now, when he has said so, he has introduced a variable. This variable means that observations cannot be taken as absolutely correct unless we know the intentions of the observation are also aligned with the research. Or if he has got any some other interest like personal interest, etc., or based on his likes, dislikes, etc., then definitely the observations will be biased. So then the physical scientists have come up to this limitation that they cannot enter, there is no equipment, instrument, microscope, telescope, etc., to observe the persons within. What are his interests? What are his observations? Therefore, this is the limitation of science. They don't have any sufficient data. They don't have any instruments by which they can conduct the subjective inquiry and see the observer's contents. There is no such thing. Therefore, now, since these limitations are there, they must hand over to the generation or the next for the subjective inquiry, because we want to know now this being a variable. So one variable is the world outside. If it keeps changing, then we cannot observe consistently. World doesn't keep changing. When we have set on our goal of, say, research on Mars, then Mars doesn't keep on changing. We can continuously conduct the inquiry. So the outer world, no problem. Then the instrument can create a variable. Looking through this telescope, observation is different. Looking through another telescope, it is different. That is not the case. The instrument is perfect. Now, observer is the last one. Observed, instrument of observation, and observer. This is the triad. Now, when it comes to observer, then the scientists thought that the interest of the observer is also equally important. If the interests are changed, observation will be different. Knowing this, it becomes a variable. So this is second reason that since there is a variable in the objective research and that variable is the observer himself, then we need to know the details of the observer. how he observes, what are his interests, etc. Now for this, physical sciences are not qualified because they don't have any instrument to do this. Therefore, they must hand over now this subjective inquiry to the next generation for them to conduct the further inquiry. So this is the reason. There are two reasons. One is at the individual level. If I want to seek the maximum happiness, and everyone wants to see that, the goal of Chinmaya mission is also to give maximum happiness to the maximum number for the maximum time. So everyone's aspiration are reflected in that motto. Therefore, we want maximum happiness and mental satisfaction. So if I want that maximum, how can I get it? I can get it by going to my subtler level of personality. Then is there any method by which I can identify with the subtlest so that I will get the maximum happiness? So this is the one of the reason to motivate subjective inquiry. Another reason is science in its own objective inquiry in the world outside. They have come across at the end of their inquiry one variable, that observer himself. And unless the observer's contents are known, his interests are known, we cannot decide whether his observations are really objective or there is some bias of subjective colors. So this is second reason. By both reasons, individual as well as the outer world, from both standpoints, the next level of human intellectual evolution has to be the subjective inquiry. And the stalwarts in the field of this subjective inquiry, called the rishis, they choose to call this inquiry as contemplation. We have not discussed this about contemplation. So we are now seeing the need for the subjective inquiry. We must satisfy ourselves, not just because the text is talking about subjective inquiry and contemplation, let's go in for contemplation. Not that way. We must appreciate the need for that, and then we must find a right authority to get the guidance from. Now the second question is, in the name of subjective inquiry, there are three words introduced: self-inquiry, subjective inquiry, and is there anything else? Synonymous word for this?
Contemplation.
Contemplation. Now about contemplation, we have said we have to discuss it. Subjective inquiry or the observer. Another word suggested is observer, because that was with reference to that observation. So inquiry about the observer and his contents, inquiry about the subject and its details, or inquiry about the self. Now, if we have to sum up all these different words, which should mean the same thing, what is that word, common word that we can call it as an inquiry? Subjective or self or observer, these all, there are three wordings are different, but they mean the same thing. Therefore, the self is equal to the subject, is equal to the observer, is equal to something that should be common for all the three. What is that common thing?
Inquirer.
Inquirer and observer means the same thing.
I. It is I.
Very good.
I.
I is the subject matter. Self means I. Have we not discussed several times this? When you write on the check, self, which means not to bank, then yourself. Otherwise, to me, self withdrawal, it is self. So self means I, me, myself. Okay. So I is the common word we can say behind self, subject, observer, or whatever you say, inquirer, etc. So all these are meaning one thing, I, the first person singular, which is applicable to all. When I say about myself, I say I, and I talk about you as you. But when you are talking about yourself, you say I am, and then you are calling us as you, he, she, it. Therefore, everyone is a subject and he objectifies the rest. This subject is commonly called as I am. Now that I am, the amness, the existence is known to everyone. Everyone says I am. But somebody says I am so and so. Somebody says I am the son of my father. Somebody says I am the father of my son. And all this, who am I, may change, but that I am continues. Therefore, amness is taken for granted. Let us not go behind that, because that exists. I exist, and nobody need to prove me that I exist. I alone, I am self-evident. Therefore, I am is self-evident. Nobody need prove that. Now, what is important is, what do we mean by the word I, which represents the subject, which represents the self, or which represents the perceiver I, feeler I, thinker I, observer I, inquirer I, etc., etc. So this is this was our second question, that what do we mean by this subjective inquiry, self-inquiry? In short, it is an inquiry on who is this I. But that also should be an objective inquiry. If I am inquiring about myself, I may be biased. I would like myself to look nice. I would like myself to be a good man. Therefore, when I inquire about myself, it will always be good. No, it is not myself. It is I as an object of our inquiry. Who is this I? This is our inquiry. Now, this is a common inquiry. Now, we are proceeding, and before proceeding, in case there are any points to be you want to contribute on our past portions which are not covered just now, or in case you have any questions on the past portion, last time whatever we discussed, please raise your hand. Yes, Parvati.
Sir, we also saw that the tools of observation cannot be same.
Very good. We cannot have the telescope or microscope. So this is the limitation of positive science. The scientists have this, that is why we said the first inquiry. The second reason is that they cannot have any instrument to conduct the details about the observer. So this is one important thing. We have covered it, but it was very important to be noted that the ordinary tools of inquiry which we use for the objective search, objective inquiry in the outer world are not applicable. And last time we gave the example. Now suppose with the same telescope, I want to see myself. Therefore, what I do, I shift to the other end, but to see that I need the what we call it as the eye side of the end. There is a particular word for that.
Eyepiece. Eyepiece.
No, the telescope has got two ends. One is the end object side end, the other is the observer side. So I have to pull that observer side end to my eyes, and I can see again the outer world only. I can't see myself with the telescope. I can't see myself with the microscope as well. Therefore, there are no tools available with positive sciences which can be used to conduct a subjective inquiry as to who is this I. Right? Anything else? Okay. The fourth para important statement is second statement sentence. Subjective inquiry should be pursued in one's own within. So now the area of observation is clear. So, the field for inquiry is our own within and not the outer world. This is clear. So now the same observer has to turn within instead of turning without for objective inquiry. He has to turn within. This is the first thing. This is an important statement. Therefore, the area of observation is now clear in its scope. Within. Now within, this is one aspect. Then the next one, in the fifth paragraph, the important statement is, in the wake of the observer, the world observed by him comes into being for him. Now this is the observation. Before entering into the field within. So the world that the scientist observes and tries to understand is totally absent for him if the scientist, the observer, is not there. This is the first statement. Second statement, in the wake of the observer, the world observed by him comes into being for him. When the scientist goes to sleep, the observer in him is put out, and therefore he has no experience of the world. When he wakes up, along with him, his world also comes to exist for his experience. What is the summary of this statement? Because the same thing is stated 3-4 times in a different manner. What is the essence of this paragraph? Gauri.
Last time we were discussing actually this paragraph. We said that when a man is in the sleeping and having dreams, in the dream state, for the dreamer, man, the dream world exists. As soon as the dream ends, and if the man wakes up, the dream world no more exists for him. He falsifies him, and then you said that the ego I falsifies the dream world and comes to the real world, the waking state world. So same way. So what? So actually, last time, I mean, what I understood from that is, we said it's very difficult for us right now to negate in the waking world when we are experiencing everything around us. It's very difficult for us to falsify or negate or say that this world doesn't exist or this is not a real world or something like that. I mean, it doesn't easily. We cannot just easily digest such a. But that's why this gives us a vision that we have to reach till that level where we should be able to falsify even this waking world also. So we have to raise ourselves from the ego I to the real I or the self.
We discussed it.
No,
No
we
doubt,
discussed this in the last Saturday. That the dreamer world, for the dreamer world only exists. He doesn't know the real, I mean, the waking state world. The waker eye doesn't know the dreamer world, dream world or deep sleep world. The dreamer eye doesn't know the other two, and in the deep sleep, nothing actually exists. But
so
because
now,
of our memory.
These are the 4 sentences in the 5 paragraphs, 5th paragraph, and they are all going round the observer and his waking world. Okay, and there is relationship between the observer and the world, and there is also a sense of being, which is first, which is second. That also is given. So finally, we have to summarize into one sentence the summary of entire paragraph.
That
So the
Yes, Moini.
world exists only when I exist.
Okay. Another Is there any other possible version, wording?
The world, uh, the state in which I exist, that state world exists for me at that time.
So now we are concerned only with the waking world. Don't talk about dream and deep sleep, etc. Though, in short, if waker and the waking world, you remember this statement I have said earlier also, the waker and the waking world rise together and fall together. The waker is awake, the waking world is available for him. Waker goes to sleep, waking world disappears from him. He cannot interact with the waking world. For him, he does not experience the waking world the moment he goes to sleep. So, waker and the world, already this statement is made here that waker is important. Because waker is there, the waking world is there. If the waker is not, as in the deep sleep state, the waking world is not accessible for him. It is not experienced by him. Now, this is the observation. Commonly, we can say at this moment, instead of giving a prime importance to the subject and secondary to the object, we say that the waker and the waking world rise together and fall together. We can apply this to others also. The dreamer and the dream world rise together and fall together. The world of deep sleep rise together along with the deep sleeper and falls together along with the deep sleeper. When deep sleeper disappears into the dream world is experienced by him. When the dreamer disappears into the waking world is experienced by him. Now the waker cannot disappear, careful, into the self. What Gauri was saying earlier, that reference is not yet come. It is a subtler reference. We will not go into that details, but the waker has to disappear in his spiritual evolution into the self, wherein the world of the self, means the self alone, is accessible or experienceable by him. So every time this dreamer, waker, dreamer, deep sleeper keep on changing, therefore none of these are real, they keep changing. But there is one changeless entity, has to be there when we see the other three changing. There is one self which does not change, which remains all the time there, illumining all the three states of conscious, of waking, dream, deep sleep. So this being the case, at this moment, we don't go into that subtler details. We only appreciate in this paragraph that if the subject is present, the world of object is available. If the subject goes to sleep, the waking world is not accessible to him. Therefore, there is no such point like research and observation possible unless the observer is available. So, among the two, the field of observation and the observer is important according to Vedanta. Then we have said that science says that the world is first. Because the world is there, you are there. Because the world has got fivefold stimuli. This stimuli stimulates your sense organs. Therefore, you come to know that there is something like sights and sounds outside. So the world is there, therefore you are there. This is what the science has to tell us. Vedanta says, no. You are there, therefore the world is there. If you are not, as in the deep sleep, the world is not there. Why should you assume the existence of the world when it is not being experienced by you? This statement you should remember. If anything exists, really exists, then you must experience it. This is the common rule that if something exists, you say, then you must experience it. Now, if the waking world exists for all the time, then even in the deep sleep, you should be aware that there is a waking world, but I am at this moment withdrawn to take my deep sleep, take my rest. there is a world outside. No, there is no awareness, there is no experience about the waking world and dream world in the deep sleep state. And therefore, when I am not experiencing anything, why should I consider that it exists? Therefore, their existence is relative existence. When I exist, the world exists. When I does not exist in the waking state, the waking state does not exist. Like this, we have to keep this observation in mind. So here, the accent and the importance is given to the observer than the field of observation, because now it is subjective inquiry. It's not an objective inquiry. So for the subjective inquiry, the observer is important, not the world of observation outside, but the world of the observer is the world within himself. This we have just now seen in the fifth paragraph. We also see that the inquiry can be conducted only within ourselves, not outside. So because outside there are no instruments by which we can check our within. So now, all having these things made clear, the reason for subjective, the need for subjective inquiry, in order to identify ourselves with the subtlest in us and get the maximum happiness. If each one of us is able to identify with the subtlest in us, then each one of us will be happy, maximum happiness. Therefore, the subjective inquiry is necessary for this. One reason. Second reason, we saw that in the objective inquiry itself, the observer has been found to be a variable, because of which the observations can change. Therefore, if that is the case, then science cannot control the observer. Science does not have the tools to check the observer and his intentions. Therefore, the scientist should hand over this inquiry further to the subjective inquiry, and that is what was suggested in the first and second paragraph. Therefore, now, because of the subject, the observer, as one of the variables, even in conducting the objective inquiry, therefore, even from the standpoint of science and scientific inquiry, the details of the observer are important. Therefore, now science has its own limitations, and they should hand over, saying that further inquiry we cannot handle for the want of proper tools, and therefore it should be taken up by the youth or generation, and they should conduct further. By this, they are encouraging the further evolution of the intellect. So that let the intellect discover the field and conduct the inquiry wherein he can conduct the details of the subject. So this is what we have seen. And now we are proceeding to the sixth paragraph. I'll read out the para. So our ancient rishis and acharyas, the great men of contemplation, arrived at this conclusion that in any given experience, the experiencer, the subject, is the counterpart of the experienced, the object. This is an important statement. They did not stop with that. They proceeded further to find out the nature of the experiencer and the mechanism by which he gains his experience. Now the field of inquiry is already decided to be within. Now when we want to conduct the subjective inquiry within, what is the scope for the inquiry? This is my first question. Richa, question is, we have already agreed so far that for conducting a subjective inquiry, we have to conduct that within and not without. First agree. This is observed earlier.
Yes.
Now we want to fix the scope of subjective inquiry. What are the things that we need to inquire and understand? So the scope of subjective inquiry within is to be now decided, which this paragraph tells us. Next, Gauri.
Scope will be the nature of the experiencer. That means the state of the state in which the experiencer's mind is there, mind and intellect are there.
That you will see later. Nature of experiencer. This is the one. To find out the nature of the experiencer. And next?
And the mechanism by which he gains his experience.
So now these are the fields within the field of subjective inquiry. Immediately we need to know what is the true nature of the experiencer. Because sometimes he behaves as an observer, sometimes he behaves as a research scholar, sometimes he behaves as a householder, sometimes he behaves. So his behavior is very many faceted, but there must be something common in him as his natural characteristic, which can be seen in any man. So that will be a true nature of the subject. This is one. And second thing is, when he is observing something, doing something, and finally gathering the experiences, what is the mechanism by which he gathers or gains his experiences? These are the two fields. Now, who are the authority to guide us in this field of subjective inquiry?
Our scriptures.
No.
Or rishis.
Here it is mentioned, the rishis and the acharyas. These are the two names referred here, and they are the authority. Now, scriptures is not referred here. See, that is a skill of presentation. If Swamiji is to talk to the youth that our scripture is the authority, they can question. How do you mean? What do you mean? We don't know what is Gita and what is Upanishad. How do you claim to be that authority? We don't accept the authority. But it is said, rishis of the yore and acharyas, these two are the authorities. Now we have to see what is the meaning of the term rishi and the term acharya. Rishis are those who have been successful in transcending all limitations and become limitlessness. They have become the self, who is limitless, who is timeless, and who is all bliss, endless bliss. So those who have reached that goal and are established in that goal, they are called as Rishi. So Rishi is the one who has crossed the limitations of samsara and has gone beyond the shores to establish in his own self and realize the self, their true nature. So they are the one who has realized the nature, their own nature, which is one of the field of our inquiry. Field of inquiry is to know the nature of the observer. Okay. So to know the nature of the subject in short. And finally, to know the nature of this I. Right? Now, rishis are those who have gone to that extent and reached the goal and discover who is this I, which is their true nature. So therefore, they become the sole authority. And next to that is acharya. Now, acharyas are those who have studied from the rishis the essential lessons, and they have intellectually understood without any doubt or perversion, and therefore they are fit to transform this information to the next generation of disciples. So, the acharyas are those who teach the scriptures. So, the rishis may keep some acharyas because it's not feasible for the rishi to teach everyone at different levels of teaching. So, for the basic level and to some extent advanced level of the scriptural learning, acharyas are deputed to teach the student. This is an immediate meaning of the word acharya. Acharya's job is to teach the scriptures. But the special term acharya, which is not equal to the teacher, which is not equal to the instructor, the moderator, the professor, the lecturer, none of these. Why? Because acharya literally means acharanat acharyaha, one who lives up to what he has been taught. Whatever his teacher has taught him, he is living up to it at the level of intellect, mind, body, sense organs, etc. So one who lives up to his knowledge, his understanding, is called as acharya. Acharanat acharyaha. That's a great difference. A teacher may talk to you a lot of things, but he himself may be free from that. He need not adopt that in his own life. Whether it is a professor, whether it is a lecturer, whether it is an instructor or moderator or teacher, whatever, none of these terms will equate acharya. We should not use all these terms in place of acharya as far as possible. Otherwise, the teacher is the next better term among the lot. Teacher, who teaches? Now here acharya is the one who teaches the scriptures. In this field of subjective inquiry, the rishis have followed the scriptures. They have lived those scriptural instructions in their own life, and through such spiritual practices, they have reached the goal. Therefore, they are called as rishis. Now, the acharyas may not have reached the goal, but they have studied the scriptures very well, without any doubt. And therefore, they can definitely teach the scriptures to their students, while simultaneously they are working on whatever they have learned, how to realize that learning in their own life. Now they are only practicing what is taught to them at intellectual, mental, and sense level, etc. But to realize that, they have to make efforts, and that is simultaneously being made by the acharya for its subjective improvement. But as far as the scriptural teachings are concerned, he is a master. About you can ask him anything, any questions related to that, he will explain you to your satisfaction. So this is the basic difference between acharya and the rishi. We are not here to set the grades, etc. of these people. They are, for all practical purposes, they are the authority for us to conduct the subjective inquiry or to conduct the contemplation. Because rishis have called them, this subjective inquiry is called, otherwise called as contemplation. Therefore, regarding the instructions on contemplation, we have acharya and rishis as our sole guide. So these are the two authorities in the world, in our inner world, in the subjective reality. So this is another point in this paragraph. Is there anything else in this paragraph? We have marked the important statement. The first statement is that these are the great men of contemplation, the rishis and the acharyas. Then the next one is, in any given experience, the experiencer, the subject, is the counterpart of the experienced object. Counterpart, when we say both are equally important, you cannot just give a subsidiary, secondary importance to the subject and say the object is most important, scientific inquiry is most important. What rishis have said in the scripture, they are old and gone, outdated. Therefore, forget that and now go by the science. Nothing like that. The observer and the observed both are equally important. Subject and object, they are counterparts in any undertaking, whether objective or subjective. Both cannot be overlooked. So both are equally important. And the last one is that they proceeded further to find out the nature of the experience, one area of inquiry. What is the nature of experience, sir? And second is the mechanism by which he gains his experiences. So there is a mechanism or a process involved in which he looks out into the world of objects, emotions, or thoughts. Then he interacts with them through the instruments of perception, feeling, or thinking, that is body, mind, intellect, and then gathers the experiences. So, from perceiving to reacting with the perceived, and then act in the world is a whole thing. Moment you see something, you react to what you see, and then act in the world. So, in this process of reception of stimuli, reaction of the mind with the stimuli, then response from the intellect for the same stimuli, and the judgment how the person should respond to the situation. All this involves a complete process. This process goes by laws, governed by laws. We cannot just set to any fancy requirement of your own. Therefore, this process, to understand this process of experience, how one comes to gather the experience, how he first perceives, how he reacts to the perceived, and how he acts finally as his responses to the world. And then in this interaction with the world, how he gathers finally the experience. So this becomes the mechanism of experience. We need to observe all what are the elements that are involved in this experience, how they react, what is their nature. So what are these factors that are involved? All this will be covered by this area called as the nature of, the mechanism of experience. And finally, the one who is the experiencer. What is his nature? Because from his outer behavior, we are not able to really find out what is his true nature. Sometimes he behaves as if he is a householder. Sometimes he behaves as an officer. Sometimes he behaves as a club friend, a member of the club, or a friend. So, seeing his different functions, one is not able to sort out what is exactly his real nature, which does not change. So, like chameleon, he doesn't keep on changing the colors like that. So, there must be something common in every man as his true nature, which does not change, but expression of that nature in terms of his responses to stimuli, in terms of gathering the experiences from the interactions and understanding them, may differ from individual to individual. But as far as the nature of the experience is concerned, it is the same for all individuals. Because we have to strike something common. Like outer field of inquiry, there are phenomenal powers. There are bases for inquiry. We can study those powers, we can study their nature, behavior, and then that will help us control that. Now here we need to know the subject, and for that we need to know the nature of the subject, how the person behaves in the outer world under different circumstances, how he behaves under the different conditions of his equipment, body, mind, intellect. His behavior or his response is different to the world, and how he behaves according to his own understanding about himself, what he considers himself to be. If he considers himself to be the manager when he is at home, then it's the mistake of identity. If he is considering as a householder in the office, it's a mistaken identity. So he assumes a relative identity. Then to this relative identity, there must be some common identity as a real unchanged identity, and which is applicable to all men. If that we are able to find out, that is called the nature of the subject. So nature of the subject will not change from individual to individual. The behavior and action may change, and there are some different variables responsible for that, and that will be covered in the mechanism of experience. But the nature of the observer is something has got to be something as common. So these are the two fields of inquiry. We have seen in this paragraph. The first thing is that who are the authorities in the field of contemplation? The rishis and the acharyas. Rishis are those who have realized the goal. They have discovered their true identity. They have gone across or gone beyond the shores of this worldly existence called as samsara, and therefore they are called as rishi. This is the etymological meaning of the word rishi. So those who have transcended the domain and range of samsara and reached their own nature, the selfhood, are called as rishis. And acharyas are those who have understood from their rishis or their teachers the essentials of the scriptural contents. They have thoroughly understood it at the intellectual level, and therefore they are qualified to teach the students. But the term acharya stands out from the rest of the terms like teacher, instructor, etc. in that way that acharanat acharya. That means he does not just give a lip talks. It doesn't come only from his lips or from his memory. He did whatever he has understood, it has percolated down the head to the heart, and he is trying to leave it at the level of the hands. So from the head to heart and heart to hand, he has thoroughly experimented whether this is practicable. Whatever he has learned intellectually, whether it can be felt or experienced in my own life, and whether I'll be able to live it throughout my life, this whatever I have learned. So one who has in his own behavior and action brought this intellectual understanding to apply, he is called Acharya. Therefore, the Acharya is a great title for a person, and usually the ashrams where the teaching goes on, Acharya is the person who is responsible for instructing the student, teaching the student the scripture. And the overall in charge must be a Rishi of that ashram, who is the main head, and he is the one who has realized the thing. It is possible that some of the acharyas also might have realized, and but then so long as they are under the care of this particular ashram and a Rishi, they will follow that Rishi and they will consider him as the authority. And if they go out and have their own ashram, each one who has realized, then they will have their own ashram, they will have their own student, their own acharya, etc. So this is in short the scope of inquiry and who are the authorities to teach us in this area about the mechanism of experience and the nature of the individual. Now we go to the next paragraph, that is 7. The 7th paragraph says, through a systematic subjective inquiry, they arrived at some staggering truths. What are they? Man, the experiencer, is the subject that gains experiences of the world outside through his instruments of experience, namely his body, mind, and intellect. All experiences that a man gains in his lifetime are either through body or through his mind, or through his intellect. His means not anybody else's. It is my body, my mind, and my intellect. Through these instruments of experiences, I get the experience. So this is the seventh paragraph. So this is now subjective inquiry is now being started, and the staggering observations, staggering truths that they come across is, first thing is that a triad is required. Three factors are required. The first factor is the experiencer, the subject. The second factor is the experienced, the object. And the third factor is the instruments of experience, namely body, mind, and intellect. Either all the three may be necessary, as in the case of waking state. Maybe body is not required in the case of dream state, and maybe all of them not required in the deep sleep state. But experience will continue for all 24 hours in all the three states. And at this moment, since it is not immediately in the scope of dream state and deep sleep state, we are only centered around waking state. And in the waking state, we require all the three equipments: body, mind, and intellect. They are the instruments of experience. The field of experience, the world of objects, the instruments of experience, body, mind, intellect, and the experiencer, the subject, that is I. I am the experiencer, contacting the world of objects through my body, mind, intellect equipment, then perceive the world through my fivefold sense of perceptions, and then gather to myself the experience. So now the experiencer and the experienced are connected by the instruments of experience, so that the experiencing is possible. Experiencing is going on throughout life. I don't know about the reality of the experienced world of OET. I don't know. I've taken for granted for all practical, they are real. I don't know the reality of Mr. PFTI, but I don't know about the reality about BMI. But one thing is certain, and that is experiencing. Experiencing is something realistic. That is definitely going on, because my life itself is the whole life is a continuous, unbroken series of experiences. Therefore, I am gathering experiences continuously. Therefore, experiencing, an important word to be noted, between experiencer, experienced, and instruments of experiencing, all the three factors can be questioned later about their reality. But one thing is certain, that in my life, experiencing is going on. I am gathering the experiences. Now, whether those what is the reality of that experience, etc., is not the question now. Among these three, all the three factors are necessary. All the three factors are necessary to be present in order that experience should take place. In any one of the three factors is absent, experience is not possible. I am reading a novel in my drawing room on Sunday morning, and at the door, my friend has come to meet me. Now, since I am so engrossed in my reading, I don't notice the presence of my friend. The object of experience is present, my friend, the subject is present, myself, but the instruments of actions are busy in something else. Therefore, experience is not possible. So here we have seen the instruments of experience are absent, experience is not possible. Now, experiencer is present, subject is present, instruments are present, but the friend has not yet come. The experience is not possible. Again, if the friend is there, the instruments of experience is there, but I am somewhere else, meaning my attention is somewhere else, then also experience is not possible. Therefore, like protons, neutrons, and electrons, all the three are necessary for a given molecule or for a given integrated particle. Similarly, here also the experiencer, the experienced, and the instruments of experiencing, all these three factors are required so that the experience can take place. And the experiencing is going on. And that is something which is realistic because I am gathering my experiences in life. I am improving in my vision about life. I am getting some new lessons through my experiences. If I got that attitude of learning from my experiences, therefore my whole life is circled around the series of experiences that I am gathering. Therefore, experiencing is the very important word, which is really realistic word. About the reality of these three factors at this moment is not the question. It is a question of deeper inquiry. So long as I am experiencing it, I am happy because my life is going on. If I stop experiencing, life is over. Therefore, experiencing is the most important word in this. We can find out from this discussion. Is there any questions on this paragraph? No. If the question is there while discussion is going on, you will be aware of that question. Okay. So now this is a very simple thing. It is not a very difficult to appreciate that when the subjective inquiry, a systematic inquiry is conducted about the instruments of experience and the experiencer and his nature and the mechanism of experience, all this, the starting facts, what we have seen is this, that all the three factors must be present in order to gain the experience. This is one fact. And experiencing is the result of subject coming in contact with the world of object by the instruments of experience. When all these three factors are aligned, then the experiencing is possible. And experiencing is something that is consistent, because of which my life is on and on. Therefore, that is the most important word, experiencing. So now we proceed to the 8th paragraph. Through his body, with its 5 sense organs, man gains the various experiences. Form through the eyes, sound through the ears, smell through the nose, taste through the tongue, and touch through the skin. The form, the sound, the smell, the taste, and the touch constituting the world of object is experienced by man through his body. See, a short paragraph, not much elaborate discussion. A very simple fact is put forth. If this is digested, then we can go to the next paragraph. These are all short paragraphs basically, because we want to go step by step. We must develop a line of thinking by going from one thought to another thought. So now here, what is the new thought that is put up? It is further details of what we said earlier, that instruments of experience. What are the instruments of experience at the body level? There are the sense organs of perception. What are the fivefold perceptions? Are given here. The sight, sound, touch, smell, and all the taste. So these, their respective sense organs. All the five sense organs are located in the physical body. Therefore, when we say sense organs, body is included. Or we have to say body and sense organs. So body and sense organs is the first thing through which we are able to perceive the outer world of objects. This is the first thing, first observation here. And the next observation is that all these are experiences, the outer world is experiences, thus through the body. When you say through the body, it is through the sense organs that are located in the body. Right? So sense organs of perception, sense organs itself means organs of perception, because there are fivefold sensations, sight, sounds, etc. And we get through the organs of perception. So these five sense organs of perception is by which the traffic of the outer world comes in and is received by the mind. Therefore, body and sense organs becomes the five gateways of knowledge related to the outer world. Then we have also seen earlier in our early discussions that entire knowledge of the outer world can be can be summarized in 5 columns only. All sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and touches. Entire world's information can be columnized into this, categorized into these 5. There is not a 6th point which is giving us some additional information about the outer world. So the entire outer world is perceived through 5 windows, and each window is giving us one type of data. This sight, a particular window will give you only the sights. A particular window will give you only the sounds. A particular window will give you only the smell, touch, or taste. Now these windows passing in the data, a relative data, they do not know what they are passing. It is the 6th sense called the mind, which gathers the data from all the 5 windows, collect it, and make a meaningful interpretation of all these 5-fold data received. So receiving the data from the sense organs, the job of the sense organs is to collect and pass inside the data. So eyes will only pick up the sights and the forms and the colors. The ears will only pick up the sound from the situation. See, we are appreciating electronic sensing and computing and all that, but see how it is happening inside. We are not conscious of it. When just you look around and instantly entire sights with colors and forms are taken in. If any noise is made, it is received by the ears. There is a perfect reception by a respective window for a respective given stimulus. Thus, entire knowledge of the outer world is available to us in these 5 columns. Those windows do not know themselves what they are seeing, but it is the mind behind those 5 windows, which is called the 6th sense, and that gathers all 5-fold stimuli, collects it in the meaningful file in which the entire data of the situation is gathered. Then it will pass to the intellect. Why we are discussing this in advance? Because we have already discussed all this earlier. Therefore, it is not a new thing for us. But incidentally, with reference to this paragraph, we are detailing out further that mind is a receiving clerk. He only receives the 5-fold data. He makes a file or folder out of that, and passes that folder for the intellect to decide. The intellect is considered as an officer in charge. All judgments, all decisions, all discerning, knowing, etc. is attributed to the intellect, the special faculty of man. And mind is not capable of judging because mind has got very many other limitations, and therefore the receiving clerk, the mind, passes on the report or folder to the intellect. Intellect judges according to his past experience, and if he uses his capacity to think independently without getting biased by the past data. Now the file shows that the fellow has done such and such activities in the past. And since the file is set inside, it means the person has come to visit the boss. The person has come. His file is with the officer. File tells him about the person, all is past. But now what is the purpose for which the person is visiting his boss again when his file report is not that good? It is the sole privilege of the officer to refer the file because that will give him the information about the past. But at the same time, he need not get biased by the past. He may have this information in his memory and meet the person afresh and see what are his intentions of meeting. Suppose if intentions are to continue what he did in the past, then the file will support him. But if the intentions are different, then it's a challenge for the officer to take the decision against the file. A government officer may say, no, I can't help it, the file is not supporting. But if it's not that helpless, then he's no more an officer. Then anybody can read the file and give the decision. Officer has got this capacity to take the decision, and the decision need not be biased by his past file. File only tells him the record of the past. But at present, with what intention is coming and all that, intellect has to be free from the bias of the past, free from the excitement of the mind in the present, free from the anxiety of how to meet him, what to tell him, and if he asks like this, what will I say? All such things, anxieties, all this keeping aside, the officer has to think with a cool mind, with a helicopter mind in a management language. With a helicopter mind, he has to observe the objectivity of the situation and take the decision of his own, which may be supported by the file, may not be supported by the file, but he has a reason for taking that decision. So this is the capacity of the intellect. Therefore, in this traffic of life, we have only seen this paragraph tells us what is the incoming of the traffic. The traffic is in. See, there's a traffic means going from both sides, both the directions. We are having incoming fivefold stimuli, and we have the outgoing fivefold responses through the organs of action. Therefore, reception and reaction or response is the traffic of life. And this is going on definitely through the five sense organs, the five windows of data collected by the mind, presented before the intellect for decisions. Intellect has given the decisions. The decisions are faithfully and sincerely executed by the mind, which again now is the executive, to execute the decision at the level of body and sense organs of action, and then give the responses to the situation. This is the whole traffic of life, and in which we are trying to understand the mechanism of experience. What is the mechanism? Finally, he comes to have an experience. But before experience, he must have the data of the outer world, then analysis of the data, then decision on the data, then respond to the outer world accordingly. Yes, in the whole traffic of life, in which here it is only talking about the reception of stimuli. So we have got the receptors as 5 windows and reactors or responders as our responses to the outer world. This traffic of life, studying this traffic of life is a great interesting job because it's all talking about myself. I'm most interested. What happens when I just exclaim outside, oh, it's interesting. Now, before I see something and after I respond to it as saying it is interesting, what has happened in between, I don't know. Ordinarily, majority of us don't know. It is a subject matter of self-inquiry, and the authorities of the Rishi, the scriptures, the Rishis and the Acharyas. Scriptures are only words, and word is the authority, no doubt, because through scriptures we come to know what we cannot know from any other source. The things that are beyond the purview of our 5 sense organs are the concern of the scriptures. That which we don't see, listen, hear, etc., that which is not perceptible but does exist, to know that the scripture is the only means for that knowledge. Therefore, scripture is the authority or means. Now, those who have studied the scriptures from the masters and lived up to them and realized the essential contents that scriptures have to advise us in their own life, they are called rishis, and they trained their disciples in the scriptural learning, and the lineage will continue from teacher to taught. So the outwardly, the knowledge is definitely passed on, but its real benefit will be for those who make that intellectual knowledge experience. So what we intellectually understand, we need to experience, for which the mind is required. To understand, the intellect is required. To experience what we understand, mind is required. And not any mind, a particular frame of mind. At present, our mind is not capable of understanding all that thing. We need to tune up our mind, like adjusting the microscope, eyepiece, object piece, and all that. We need to adjust the mind, tune the mind up for this frequency so that whatever I have intellectually understood through the process of meditation, I'll be able to experience through the medium of mind. So, this is subjective inquiry. This is self-inquiry. This is the inquiry about who is this I. And at this moment, we have only seen how the transaction of life, input by 5-fold stimuli from the outer world, processing in between, and the output as our responses to the stimuli. This activity or this traffic of life is continuously going on, and the result of this is experiencing all throughout. Experiencing is most important, but now we need to know what is the mechanism of experience, and then we have to see what is the nature of experiencer. We stop here. In case there is any question for the last paragraph, please ask. Otherwise, we'll go in for announcement. Yes, Sarojama, you have raised your hand.
See, you have told the mechanism. That mechanism is connected to the raising of the mind intellect to the level of evolved in order to experience the I myself in our.
This mechanism is not meant for experiencing myself. First thing. At present, the portions that we are discussing is the mechanism of experience of the outer world. We are in the waking world, and in order to gather the experiences of the outer world, what is the mechanism? How do we come to know about the outer world? Through our perceiving sense organs. Then how we gather the information, then how we decide on the information, then how we execute this, our responses to the situation through mind, sense organs of action, etc. This is called the mechanism of experience of the outer world. Now we need to understand this. Then we need to understand what is the mechanism of the experience of the dream world. Then we will go to the experience of the deep sleep world, wherein none of the instruments are present and still we experience.
Yeah.
That experience is without any help of experience, and such an experience, if we can bring in the waking state, meaning in spite of body, mind and intellect present in the waking state, I transcend them all, go beyond the intellect, and then without the help of any instrument, I experience the self. What you are asking is this experience, but this is not at present in the scope of our discussion, the topic that is under the. So this topic only tells us the mechanism of the experience related to the outer world. Now the mechanism related to the experience of the inner world, like dream, deep sleep, and the state of selfhood, definitely is different, and that is a different scope of observation, study, understanding, etc. Now we'll read the pledge and conclude with Shanti Part. We stand as one family, bound to each other with love and respect. We serve as an army, courageous and disciplined, ever ready to fight against all low tendencies and false values within and without us. We live honestly the noble life of sacrifice and service, producing more than what we consume and giving more than what we take. We seek the Lord's grace to keep us on the path of virtue, courage, and wisdom. May thy grace and blessing flow through us to the world around us. We believe that the service of our country is the service of the Lord of Lords, and devotion to the people is the devotion to the Supreme Self. We know our responsibilities. Give us the ability and courage to fulfill them. Om Tat Sat. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah. Sarve santu niramayah. Sarve bhadrani pashyantu. Ma kasyat dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya. Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityormamritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harih Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harih Om.